Most people say that the sense of freedom they get from jumping and flying through the air is the best part of kitesurfing. It's also the biggest attraction to new kite surfers and keeps those who have already mastered it obsessed with the sport over the years. But jumping can often be confusing for inexperienced kite surfers, as it's the power and lift from the kite that allows us to jump, and not necessarily a wave or ramp. It's possible to jump on flat water or with the help of waves, and with a little practice, anyone can do it. To learn to jump, you must be able to ride with power and maintain an edge. Though the temptation will be to try and jump as high as possible, remember that it feels much better to land rather than crash. So our first progression will start with smaller jumps. Here we'll only be using small movements of the kite to avoid getting into too much trouble. Then in the next progression, we'll use more extreme movements of the kite, allowing you to get some real height. Finally, we'll introduce you to popping, jumping without using the lift from the kite, something which looks simple, but will build on many of the skills you have learned through this chapter. One final point. Jumping involves you leaving the water and flying downwind, so be sure that you've got enough space downwind. So don't jump close to the beach, don't jump when you're upwind of other kiters, and don't jump if you have a kiter close behind you. Always look behind you before jumping.
When first learning to jump, understand that it is initialized by using the power of the kite as it moves towards the top of the wind window and generates lift. At the same time, edging of the board, close to the wind, is used to resist the pull from the kite until the last minute. The speed at which you move the kite from 11 or 1 up to the top of the window and your ability to hold an edge until the last second will affect not just the height and length of the jump, but also controlling the air and landing. Let's start with our first run through of your first jump. Ride controlled and fairly fast with your kite low, and then bring it up slowly to 11 or 1 o'clock. Edge hard, maintaining your current direction, leaning back against the kite as you sheet the bar in and pull with your backhand to pilot the kite up to 12 o'clock. When you feel the kite pulling you upwards, come forwards and release the board's edge. Let your weight hang from the kite, through the harness, keeping the kite at 12 o'clock. As you start to drop from the jump, pull lightly with your front hand to direct the kite back down into the power zone. As you come into land, extend both of your legs, pulling your back foot under your hips to ensure the board points downwind. Bend your legs to soften the landing, but immediately extend your front leg to force the board downwind and keep the board flat. Slowly apply pressure to the hillside edge and start edging back upwind. The kite in this initial progression of the jump is very important. Pilot gently, which should mean it is hard to make errors in your kite flying, allowing you to concentrate on what the board and legs are doing. Initially, move the kite slowly to 11 o'clock and then quickly up to 12. It's when the kite moves quickly that the pull will increase. And as it reaches 12, the board edge is released and leaves the water. You keep the kite above at 12 during the middle of the jump, but as you start to drop, pull with your front hand so the kite heads back down into the power zone. You need some forward pull from the kite as you land to keep the kite stable and balance your weight against the kite so that you can stay up on the board and ride off immediately. You'll want to keep the kite sheeted in throughout the jump to allow for maximum power and stability from the kite. As the kite power increases and you're pulled from the water, sheet the bar in completely. Only sheet out as you come into land, and this will help you control any excess power from the kite. You need to understand the feeling of when to release the edge. This becomes crucial when we introduce more power and lift from the kite in the next progression. You need to make sure that you're edging hard as you fly the kite towards 12. This will give you resistance against the kite, more power, and allow you to stay in the water until the kite is close to 12 and pulling you upwards. Now, when we say edging hard, it's worth noting that this means edging with both your heels, so the full length of the rail is engaged. You don't want to be carving the board upwind, but instead maintaining a constant course close to the wind. When you edge correctly, you should find that the kite simply pulls you from the water, without the need to push off with your legs. At this point, you want to keep your body stable under the kite, allowing your body to hang from the harness and bending your legs. The second key area is during landing. You need to make sure that the board points downwind as you land. This means that you can handle any extra power from the kite, as you can ride directly towards it and reduce the tension in the lines. Achieve this by twisting at your hips as you start to drop from the jump. By pulling your back foot under your hips and slightly extending your front leg. There are two areas to consider for your upper body. The first is during the launch. As with any edging technique, ensure you keep your shoulders back and your hips forwards as you send the kite to 12 and edge hard on the heel side edge. This will put your body in the best position so that when your kite pulls you off the water, you can keep your body stable under the kite. The second area to consider for the upper body is as you come into land. As you drop, the kite's pull on you will decrease, and you position your body so the board can point downwind. You can help this movement by pushing down on the bar with your arms, so your upper body weight comes over the bar rather than hanging off it. This puts you back in control of the kite and thus the board. This technique of keeping weight on the bar is a small but vital element of almost every aerial trick you'll encounter in the future as a kite surfer.
With jumping, there are a lot of mistakes that can be made, and many may seem similar with only subtle differences between them. You can now use the following menu to jump to the mistake that is relevant to you. Watch them all, or skip them altogether. The mistakes covered are getting very little height or not leaving the water at all. Your launch feels delayed, but then you get pulled up quickly and drop back into the water. A low fast jump, landing with lots of speed. Spinning backwards under the kite. Landing and falling backwards. Landing, but the board skids along on the hillside edge. Spinning forwards during the jump. If you try and jump but don't leave the water, or only get a small amount of height, then the most common reason is piloting the kite too slowly or through too small a part of the window. It could also be because you have not sheeted the bar in as the kite reaches 12. The final reason is that you have not flown the kite all the way up to 12. Releasing your board's edge too early and then pulling with your front hand too early and starting to redirect the kite back down too soon. Where the kite starts, how fast you fly the kite up to 12, and how much you sheet in really does depend on how powered up you are. So start with the kite at 45 and pull harder with your backhand with each successive attempt until you find just the right amount of power to get you comfortably off the water. If you edge, release, but don't leave the water initially, but then the kite pulls you up and drops you back into the water, then you've piloted the kite too slowly up to 12, released the edge of the board, but continue to fly the kite behind you. The power then kicks in at the last minute, but it's short-lived as the kite is not above you to support your weight and you fall back into the water. For these initial small jumps, pilot the kite faster up to 12, and then level the bar out as it reaches 12. If you end up doing a low, fast jump, landing with lots of speed, which can be hard to control, then you are releasing your edge too early, while the kite still has some sideways pull, rather than pulling you directly upwards. You must learn to keep your body weight back against the kite, edging hard with both your feet until the kite comes close to 12. You can also sheet the bar in and out as you load up the edge to maintain just the right amount of power. But remember to sheet in as you launch. If you end up spinning backwards under the kite, then you have either pushed off too hard with your back foot or thrown your shoulders and head backwards as you launch. This puts you off balance and can be very hard to recover from. Ensure that as the kite pulls hard and you release the board's edge, you have equal weight between your feet and you let the kite pull you from your harness, sitting back against it but keeping some weight on your hands and the bar. If you land and falling backwards, then you have probably flown the kite correctly during the launch, but have then made one of two mistakes. You might be continuing to pilot the kite behind you, losing your lift and support as you come into land. Alternatively, you could be simply leaving the kite at 12 or piloting it very slowly back in the new direction as you come into land. For these smaller jumps, once the kite reaches 12, level the bar off to keep the kite over your head, and as you fall from the jump, pull reasonably hard with your front hand to redirect the kite back down into the power zone. If you land but the board skids along on the hillside edge, then you are landing with the board perpendicular to the wind, and you are unable to immediately engage the hillside edge and control the power from the kite, which wants to pull you directly downwind. As you come into land, you need to twist at your hips, pulling your back leg under your body and extending your front leg so as to direct the board so that it points downwind. If you find yourself twisting forwards as you come into land, then you are leaning into the front side of your harness as you launch and hang in the jump. Ensure that your weight is centered in the harness, keeping your shoulders back, and you should naturally be able to look down through your arms, rather than over your front arm. Once you are able to hold the edge until the kite is pulling upwards, you are ready to start using more extreme movements of the kite and attempting jumps in stronger winds. This enables more height in the jump and opens the opportunity to attempt more advanced jumps and tricks. So let's run through the second jump progression, using the full power of the kite. Riding controlled and fairly fast, with your kite low, edge hard on the hillside edge. Keep your weight back against the kite and pull moderately hard with your back hand to pilot the kite up towards 12 in a steady motion. When you feel the kite pulling upwards, sheet the bar in and come forwards to release the edge, allowing the kite to lift you up. Let your weight hang from the kite through the harness, but keep some weight over the bar and bend your legs to stabilise your body. Pilot the kite slightly past 12 before balancing it in the sky, keeping it there until you start to come back down. As you drop, first pull lightly with your front hand to start the kite moving forwards, pulling harder as you get closer to landing so that the kite drops down into the power zone. Keep your back leg bent, but straighten your front leg to point the board downwind. As you land, keep the board pointing downwind and flat. Slowly apply pressure to the hillside edge and start edging back upwind as you balance against the power of the kite. To really start to get larger jumps, you need to be riding well powered up. With enough power, you can edge hard with the kite low and maintain a more average board speed. working on keeping your edge held until the last moment. Once you have this timing and control figured out, then you can start to increase your board speed, whilst continuing to edge hard, and this will allow you to boost the largest jumps. You should aim to have the bar fully sheeted in to give you the maximum power throughout the lead up to the launch. Review the Riding in Strong Winds chapter to get more tips on control when overpowered. You will launch off the water as the kite reaches 12 o'clock, but unlike the initial smaller jumps, you want to continue to fly the kite past 12 so that it's slightly behind you. This helps to position your body to turn slightly and face forwards. Because you will now be hanging in the air for longer, you must keep the kite stable in this position, slightly behind you until you start to fall from the top of the jump. Having the kite slightly behind means you can slowly redirect the kite so that it's facing forwards, ready to drop down into the power zone. Much like when we water start and start by bringing the kite behind us. Experienced riders will often do a small loop of the kite directly overhead to achieve the same effect. But this should only be attempted when your kite skills improve and you're confident in looping the kite. Keep your body weight compact so that you stay balanced. Let your body hang off the chicken loop through your harness, but maintain light pressure on the bar with your hands and arms to keep it sheeted in and so that you are in control of where your body weight ultimately is positioned. It's also worth actively sucking in your stomach muscles and tensing your back muscles so that you maintain the body position and stay balanced. Coming into land, you need to pull hard with your front hand to pilot the kite into the power zone. Your aim is to land with the kite high in the window, but it positions so that it's facing down into the power zone, ready to accelerate and pull you directly downwind. This allows you to take any downwards momentum that will give you a hard crash into the water and translate it into a sideways pull that you can control and use to land with forward speed, planing out immediately on landing. During the launch, try and hold your hillside edge for as long as possible. This will enable a high rather than long jump. Don't be tempted to initiate the jump because of the increase in pull as the kite rises. You must wait for the upwards lift rather than the sideways pull. As the kite rises, lean back further and